I'm on a large landing transport for the first time, and so far I'm liking it. I'm walking unhurriedly down the spacious corridor of the hangar deck, curiously watching people in camouflage and naval uniforms rushing about their business. From the outside, of course, I've seen such ships many times, but I've never had the chance to be inside one before. I don't know how the military personnel who have been serving here for a long time perceive all this ambiance, but everything is new to me. Among the businesslike hustle of the military, I look like a white crow, or rather a bright parrot that accidentally flew into a colony of king penguins. But maybe I'm slightly exaggerating. My clothes aren't that flashy, but against the backdrop of strictly and uniformly dressed Marines and Navy personnel, I look completely out of place. I catch curious glances, but no one shows any particularly keen interest in me. If a civilian somehow ended up here, it means it's necessary, and there's an appropriate order for that. "Excuse me, Lieutenant," I politely stop a pretty female Marine passing by. "Could you tell me how to find Captain Maslev?" "At headquarters. They said he was somewhere around here." "Look in Hangar 5. The female Marine doesn't bother with formal, you address, and she's actually right to do so. We're roughly the same age, and we're not connected by any chain of command. The company commander is checking the readiness of the atmospheric bots, so he'll definitely be there for at least another 20 minutes. "Thanks." I smile at the woman and I'm about to move on, but she stops me with a counter question. "Are you that civilian specialist that command saddled us with as a passenger?" "Well, probably." I shrug. "I'm Roman Prokhorov, senior developer of artificial intelligence systems at Zaslan Corporation, seconded to you to participate in the exercises." "Are you from Captain Maslev's unit?" "Lieutenant Elzeretson, commander of the medium walking tank platoon." The woman introduces herself with a slight smile and raises an eyebrow slightly. "We haven't had civilians sent to us before, at least not as pilots in combat equipment." I'm still in shock myself. I answer Elsa quite sincerely. "Beautiful girl. I wonder what made her choose such a profession. Almost my height, athletic figure, but everywhere that a form should curve, it curves very seductively." I try not to stare too openly at the female Marine. "See you around, senior developer." Lieutenant Rutson nods, and for a moment a playful spark flashes in her eyes. She clearly notices my interest but perceives it as something ordinary, self-evident. "I have to go, and you'd better not keep the captain waiting. Hangar 5 is further down the corridor. There'll be a sign on the left." I watch Elsie walk away for a couple of seconds, and then turn around to head to Captain Maslev, only to run into the amused gazes of 3 Navy men. Not malicious or mocking, just amused, and with a shade of complete understanding of the situation. I nod to them and move on. What am I doing in this realm of shoulder boards, military uniforms, and shooting iron? I really am a civilian specialist, but somehow I ended up taking a job at a corporation that decided to capture part of the suddenly emerging and rapidly growing market for combat vehicles designed for battles on planets and in space. It wasn't there, and then suddenly it appeared. No, nobody attacked us, and we didn't encounter aliens in the explored part of the galaxy either. At least not living aliens. But dead ones were found in abundance and variety, along with planets burned to the ground, destroyed orbital factories, blown-up void shipyards, and other signs of a brutal war that ended with the complete annihilation of several highly developed star races. Where the victors went, and whether they existed at all, remained unclear. Probably they did exist, but for some reason, they didn't need the planets and star systems of the destroyed races. When long-range reconnaissance first stumbled upon evidence of this massacre, Earth experienced a genuine shock. Naturally, we began to apply the situation to ourselves, and the conclusions turned out to be extremely pessimistic. If such a blow were to fall on the Federation, we would be wiped out in a few weeks. Earth was completely unprepared for such a war. Gradually, as more and more destroyed planets were discovered, the picture became clearer. The enemy clearly fell upon the star systems of the perished races suddenly. They seemed to get along quite peacefully with each other, and if they ever fought among themselves, those times had long passed. So if they had known about the attack in advance, they might have fought it off. They possessed very advanced technologies. But the unexpected attack left them no chance. The Lyagors held out the longest. The large amphibians fought desperately, even when their last allies, anthropomorphic beings covered with hard, scaly skin, had already been completely destroyed, and 3 other races had long been just memories. In the end, the Lyagors were also unlucky, although, Judging by all accounts, they were closest to salvation. Alas, it didn't work out. We spent a long time trying to find survivors, but the search led nowhere. The unknown enemy had very thoroughly cleaned up all the surrounding space. However, we may have simply arrived too late. The last battles in the destroyed star systems ended almost 100 years ago. If anyone survived, they forever left this area of space. The reaction of the Federation government was simple and unequivocal. Earth and the colonies began to frantically arm themselves, creating space fleets and powerful planetary defense systems. No one was surprised anymore by orbital fortresses hanging over populated planets, and extensive positional areas of ground-based anti-space defense batteries placed right in the middle of urban agglomerations and multi-tiered megalopolises. Everyone wanted to live, and anyone who wished could familiarize themselves with what the unknown enemy was capable of. Footage of the aliens' burned cities lay in the infonet in open access. The most frightening thing was the uncertainty. Almost 100 years had passed, and one could only guess what the enemy who committed genocide in the galaxy had become during this time. Perhaps the Federation today would have repelled that enemy as it was a century ago. But 100 years is no joke, and we needed to prepare for a qualitatively new confrontation. However, so far there had been no battles, and the armed-to-the-teeth Army and Navy simply had no real opponent. But the military equipment market was actively growing, and industrial corporations were waging their own cold but merciless war for a place in it. And in this war, the Zaslan Corporation had both bright victories and bitter defeats. The Sirius 22 exercises became an event that none of the competing corporations could afford to miss. Except that one of my company's most promising developments hasn't been completely finalized yet, and time has run out. If we don't present it for combat training tests in conditions as close as possible to real combat operations, United Technologies will win the competition for creating a robotic platoon of assault drones without any fight at all. And these are huge reputational and financial losses that my employer categorically refuses to accept. The timing of the exercises was postponed twice, and not as usually happens to a later time, but on the contrary, to an earlier one. In the end, we simply didn't make it, with the deadline failure occurring in several directions at once. United Technologies has been working on their projects a couple of years longer than us, and in terms of readiness, they are way ahead of us. Competitors, naturally, don't need us, and their lobby in the military leadership of the Federation has two strong positions, and our people apparently can't resist them yet. As a result, the only machines with which Zaslan had a chance to enter the competition were my assault drones, unmanned walking tanks with missile and cannon armament. In battles, they are led by an operator located in a well-protected mobile control module moving behind the battle formations of the robotic platoon. And it was with the operator that we had the main problems. The CEO summoned me directly, bypassing the department head and the branch manager, which in itself was an unprecedented case in the corporation. But, as it turned out, circumstances demanded it. "Roman, I have bad news for you," the head of the company announced right away. "We won't be able to prepare an operator for your machines. You've seen the results of the factory tests yourself. None of our military pros can handle controlling the assault drones. The interface is still too raw and complex. They simply don't have the specialized knowledge to work effectively in combat conditions." Yevgeny Pavlovich, wait, I already know what you want to say. The CEO stops me with a sharp wave of his hand. "I have no complaints about you and your people. You've already done almost the impossible, given the time you had at your disposal. The question is different. Our corporation simply must present its machines for testing. If Sirius 22 passes without us, we will lose for years the positions in the weapons market that we've won with such difficulty." "I understand, but, Roman," the head of the corporation doesn't let me speak again. "We have only one option left. You will lead your machines into training battle yourself." Yevgeny Pavlovich, you know perfectly well that I'm not military. I can control the assault drones, but to lead them into battle against well-prepared professionals. How do you imagine that? This time the CEO doesn't interrupt me. I imagine it poorly. The director shakes his head grimly. But there is no other way out. Here it's not so much about winning as about proving our ability to present competitive products for testing. Your robotic platoon must perform worthily and demonstrate our viability as a manufacturer of military equipment. We have 2 weeks with you before departure for the exercise. You will be trained by the best Army experts in tactics for using armored vehicles in combined arms combat. Your task is to demonstrate all the capabilities of our products during the exercises. The uncles with big shoulder boards should be convinced that they can and should deal with us. If you can do this, you'll become the department head and lead the entire project, not just the interface and artificial intelligence system development group for the assault drones. If you fail, we'll have to close this direction with all the ensuing consequences. Do you understand the prospects? With crystal clarity, the smile on my face hardly looks cheerful. When do I start? The CEO gives me a sharp look and touches the screen of the selector communication device. Olga, has Colonel Volsky arrived? Waiting in the reception area. Let him in. That's how I ended up on the large landing transport, Anchorage, in the binary star system, Sirius, at the head of a team of engineers and technicians from the Zaslan Corporation. Though my people are almost constantly sitting in the allocated hangar and are engaged in final testing and adjustment of the assault drones and the control module, while I'm going to meet my temporary commander, to whose company my robotic platoon has been assigned as reinforcement. I'm already anticipating how the captain will be delighted when he understands who he'll have to command during the exercises. Even before the flight, Colonel Volsky explained to me in detail what a joy it is for any officer when a civilian who is not accustomed to military discipline and subordination, and who hasn't even taken an oath, and therefore isn't really obliged to follow orders, gets underfoot during combat. And in this sense, I'm quite a gift. No, I'm usually ready to carry out understandable and reasonable orders from superiors, but I hate stupid orders with all the fibers of my soul and can tell someone off far and colorfully. In the department, they've known about this habit of mine for a long time and try to smooth out the corners. But we'll have to see how it works out with Captain Maslov. However, when it's really necessary, I can also avoid aggravating the situation myself. Now I need a specific result, and I'm not going to risk it. The company commander has found exactly where Elsa said, in the 5th hangar near one of the landing bots. Something about this armored iron strongly displeases the captain, and the technician trying in vain to stand at attention is listening to an angry dressing down from him. I wait for the educational process to end and hesitate for a couple of seconds, trying to figure out how to address the company commander. Some ritual army phrases heard in passing, like permission to address, are spinning in my head, but I perfectly understand how ridiculous they will sound in my performance, and I settle on a quite civilian variant. Captain, sir, would you spare me a couple of minutes of your attention? The company commander slowly turns in my direction with the obvious intention of responding with something sharp, but almost immediately understands who exactly on this ship could address him in such a non-regulation manner, and relaxes a bit. He has, of course, been informed of my arrival in advance. Mr. Prokhorov, at your service. I smile slightly and shake the hand extended by the officer. Captain Maslov. My new commander introduces himself perfunctorily. Please wait a bit. I need about 10 minutes to finish everything here. It seems the captain also doesn't quite understand how to behave with me and decides to simply accept the style of communication I've proposed. We continue our conversation already in the company commander's office. Let's cut to the chase, the captain suggests, sitting down in an armchair and offering me a seat opposite. I think I won't be revealing any secret to you by saying that you and your platoon are about as welcome to me as a pain in the ass. I didn't doubt that for a second. I nod impassively and continue to look attentively at Maslov. I have a well-coordinated unit, the captain decides to explain his words. Every soldier knows his maneuver, and then command immensely delights me with the news that I'm being assigned an experimental robotic platoon for reinforcement, under the control of some smartass from the Zaslan Corporation, and a completely civilian one at that. And it would be fine if I were given some standard task. But no, I receive an order quite worthy of a company reinforced with a full-fledged platoon of walking tanks. Well, maybe it's not so bad, Captain. I shrug and take a tablet from my belt bag. I think you should first familiarize yourself with the characteristics of my machines. It seems the company commander is slightly jarred by the informal, you, address and the absence of, sir, before his rank, but he himself proposed cutting to the chase. So it's too late to back out, even if he meant something else. I naturally won't address him like this in front of subordinates, but when we're alone, let him bear it. I activate the holographic projector function, and a three-dimensional image of one of my machines unfolds above the table, accompanied by explanatory captions. The captain instantly forgets about all the hang-ups with subordination and delves into studying the tactical and technical characteristics of the equipment that has come under his command. I like his reaction. Perhaps everything won't be as bad as I feared. Why such a bias towards missile weapons? The captain asks after some time. Usually, the main armament of a tank is plasma and kinetic guns. Despite all the advantages of missiles, their guidance systems are too vulnerable to electronic warfare. That's the main feature of our development. I try to dispel the company commander's doubts. Our artificial intelligence systems effectively combat interference and optoelectric phantoms. That's what they say every time new missiles come to us. But they invariably turn out to be junk. Despite the beautiful fairy tales about artificial intelligence, the captain shakes his head doubtfully. It's simple. Each improvement in guidance systems is accompanied by advancing progress in EU means. And the result is always the same. Most missiles fly anywhere but at the target, and the rest are successfully shot down by kinetic 6 barrels. It's not easy to convince the company commander, and I quickly abandoned these attempts. After all, my assault drones also have guns. And this somewhat reconciles the captain with the grim reality. About 20 minutes later, the rest of the company's officers join us. The captain unfolds a tactical hologram over the table with a map of the foothills of a massive basalt ridge on the second largest continent of the planet Sirius-8. The area of interest is located not far from the coast. Along the shore stretches a long mountain chain. To the east of it lies the ocean. On the western side, the foothills smoothly transition into hilly terrain, gradually turning into a flat steppe. According to the received briefing, somewhere here are well protected and covered by masking fields batteries of plasma anti-space defense guns of the enemy. The captain highlights on the hologram the supposed area of operations for the company. In conjunction with several similar objects, it seriously hinders the fleet from providing support to our ground forces from orbit. As a result, the operation to expand the bridgehead captured by the first wave of landing forces is stalling. Judging by the officers' faces, the terrain cut by mountain spurs clearly doesn't evoke any enthusiasm in them. I've also managed to pick up a few things in the last 2 weeks and understand that anything can be hidden in this stone labyrinth, especially if you have powerful masking field generators and adequate air defense means at your disposal. Aerial reconnaissance yielded no results, the captain reports, as if reading my thoughts. The enemy's air defense shot down all the unmanned probes sent on approach. Our task is to stealthily advance to the approaches of the battery and simulate a ground attack. We must engage the covering forces of the ASD positional area in combat and force the enemy to reveal their firing points. A massive missile strike will be launched at the targets we identify, after which we are ordered to take control of the battery positions and destroy everything the missiles don't handle. Questions? At first glance, the briefing seems standard, and the task quite feasible. However, as always, there are a number of nuances, and judging by everything, I'm not the only one with doubts. How will we get there? Elsa asks, studying the map carefully. It's too far to go from the bridgehead, and it's unlikely we'll be able to do it unnoticed. That won't be necessary, the captain nods, agreeing with his subordinate's opinion. We'll reach the starting point on landing bots. We'll go at low altitude along the coast. The fleet will allocate 3 Phantoms for this operation. They'll cover us with a masking field umbrella and interference generators. It's believed that this should be enough to reliably protect our bots from detection. After landing, we'll have about 20 kilometers left to the target. And there, no one will cover us anymore. Command didn't want to risk the Phantoms. Commander, we're not scouts. The lieutenant with a pronounced Asian appearance joins the discussion. In Maslow's company, he commands a heavy infantry platoon. Stealth is not our strongest side. They'll detect us about an hour after the Phantoms leave, somewhere halfway to the line from which the attack is planned. If we're very lucky, we'll cover 2/3 of these 20 kilometers, but no more. In any case, there can be no talk of a stealthy advance. Mitsumi is right, Commander. The anti-aircraft defense platoon commander supports the Asian. They'll hit us while we're still on the march. There's no doubt about that. The question is only with what exactly they'll hit us. But I think in any case, the battery's covering forces have enough means to multiply us by 0. I can't cancel the briefing, the captain responds firmly. It's clear that he himself doesn't like the situation at all, but he's powerless to change it. This part of the operation has been handed down to us from above and is not subject to adjustment. Unpleasant suspicions begin to stir in my head. I immediately remember the lobbyists of United Technologies, whose efforts twice shifted the timing of the exercises. If they manage that, then setting up the company into which they shoved my platoon as reinforcement is generally a simple matter. They'll simply burn us on the approach to the attack line, and the tests will fail before they even properly begin. Beautiful and tasteful, the Phantoms will provide us with cover only to the landing point. Then the EU machines will go about their business and leave us alone. The company will be smeared with missiles in some narrow gorge. but the report will indicate that all necessary efforts were made to protect it. Orders for the Phantom's flights exist? They exist. Did the pilots fulfill the assigned task? They did, but no one will delve into the small details, especially if everyone who needs to be has transparently hinted that it's not worth digging deeply in this direction. Even if the lawyers of the Zaslan Corporation, as a result of lengthy proceedings, manage to prove something, the time will still be hopelessly long. So all these efforts will lead nowhere. Perhaps for the first time since the day when the CEO announced that it would be me who would act as the operator of the assault drone platoon at the exercises, this decision begins to seem to me the only correct one. None of our military specialists simply can know about these machines what I know, which means none of them could find a way out of the current situation. Captain, sir, I quietly address the commander, taking advantage of the pause that has arisen in the discussion. Does the briefing explicitly specify the timeframes for the start of the attack and the line from which we should start it? But if I understand correctly, you don't have a direct order to concentrate the entire company at the starting position? Of course not, the company commander answers with slight irritation. He clearly doesn't want to waste time explaining elementary things to a civilian. Why bring the air defense platoon, the air reconnaissance section, or the technical support vehicles to the front line? So you can determine yourself which forces the company will start the attack with from the line specified in the briefing. Naturally, irritation in the captain's voice is joined by noticeable interest. In that case, we have some alternative. I mark a slight smile on my face and look over the company's officers. If you allow, Captain, sir, I'll introduce your subordinates to some features of my assault drones. You've already had time to familiarize yourself with their characteristics and quite rightly noted that they differ quite significantly from ordinary walking tanks. Glittering waters flash and rapidly rush away beneath us. The landing bots move along the coastline, pressing almost to the water's surface. Slightly above us, the Phantoms glide as blurred shadows. Insanely expensive but truly effective aerospace electronic suppression machines. Unfortunately, there are only a few dozen of them in the entire fleet, so the reluctance to risk such valuable combat units looks like a quite logical argument. Well, at least it should seem logical in the report on the complete failure of our operation. 5 minutes to the landing point, the captain pronounces with concentration. I hear his voice in my helmet headphones, and from his intonation, I understand that the company commander doesn't like what's happening at all. Actually, my temporary commander didn't feel much optimism from the very beginning. It wasn't difficult to connect the unpleasantness that fell on him with my appearance on the landing transport anchorage. Initially, my operation plan caused a storm of objections. I'm still surprised that I was listened to at all. Thanks to Elsa, at first. She very emotionally called my idea complete nonsense. But then, as other options were analyzed and their complete hopelessness was realized, she herself suggested thinking about the crazy fantasies of the armchair strategist. 1 minute. The tension in the captain's voice increases, waves remain behind, and a strip of beach and lush coastal vegetation flashes beneath us. The detachment breaks up into 3 groups, each covered by one of the Phantoms. Hiding in the gorges between mountain spurs, we move deeper and deeper into the continent. We cross the mountain range using a saddle between 2 snow-covered peaks. 20 seconds. Gray rocks interspersed with sparse vegetation rush beneath us again. However, with each second, there's more and more greenery. On point, reports the Bob pilot. I'm noticeably shaken when the heavy machine descends onto an uneven rocky platform at the bottom of another gorge. To the right and left of us, 2 more landing bots are landing. Our Phantom hasn't left yet, continuing to cover the landing. I drive the assault drones out, and my bugs quickly scatter, forming a security perimeter around the landing zone. I don't even need to give them commands. The procedure is standard, and the artificial intelligence handles it quite well on its own. I bring the control module out of the bot. Essentially, it's a heavy command tank based on a well-protected universal chassis platform with 8 articulated limbs. I check the tactical hologram. The forces allocated to me as cover are already at the starting positions. Ready to move out, Lieutenant Mitsumi reports to the captain. Formally, he commands the advanced detachment, which includes my platoon. It's clear to everyone who exactly should play the key role in the upcoming battle, but Captain Maslev cannot transfer his officer to the command of a civilian by definition, and I understand him perfectly. Begin, the company commander orders briefly. There's no need for more detailed commands. The routes of the combat groups and the order of their actions have long been agreed upon and communicated to the subordinates, and the conditional enemy has not yet manifested itself in any way. We move out. While the company moves in 3 parallel columns through neighboring gorges, our detachment gradually moves ahead, performing the role of an advance guard. Lieutenant Mitsumi's heavy infantry moves quite briskly. The servo drives of the exoskeletons allow maintaining a high pace, practically without tiring the personnel. 2 of my bugs lead the column, the scouts of the platoon. They have good scanners and more advanced masking fields than the rest of the assault drones. Alas, it wasn't possible to equip all my machines with such equipment. Strict price restrictions specified in the competition conditions didn't allow it. We cover about 10 kilometers without changing the order of movement. But then it's time to separate again. The idea is to send forward only soldiers and equipment whose masking fields and electronic warfare means give a chance to reach the line specified in the briefing undetected. Such combat units amount to barely a third of the company, and my assault drones are among them. Initially, the conditions of the competition announced by the Ministry of Defense didn't require high stealth from assault robots. It was assumed that they would enter battle in conditions where the enemy's positions had already been revealed by reconnaissance, or the enemy had identified itself by engaging friendly units in combat. Nevertheless, very decent electronic warfare means were built into the design of my bugs. The task of completely avoiding detection wasn't set for them, but they could quite well make it difficult for the enemy to acquire a target, knock a missile off course, or confuse the guidance system of an enemy gun. Had someone from the former professional military who transferred to work at the Zaslan Corporation after retirement been in my place, it wouldn't have even occurred to them to try to change anything in the basic system settings, although the control module interface fully allowed it. But they don't teach combat robot pilots such things. It's unnecessary for them. This is too specialized knowledge, almost never required by the military. It's better to spend time on combat training and leave digging into robot brains to civilian specialists. But in this case, both the developer and the pilot turned out to be the same person, my beloved self. And the raw, unfinished interface allowed me to put the optoelectric equipment of the assault drones into non-standard operating modes directly from the control module cabin, reducing their resource, worsening some important tactical and technical characteristics, but giving capabilities that the conditional enemy absolutely doesn't expect from assault machines. By roughly interfering with the operation of the masking field generator and the interference system, I reduced the ability of the assault drones to withstand self-guided missiles almost to zero, but noticeably increased their invisibility to broadband scanners. Restoring the original settings is a simple matter, and on the march, general masking is much more important to me than the ability of the bugs to knock enemy missiles off course. Lieutenant, I call Mitsumi on a personal communication channel. Your people better move as close as possible to my machines. Then I can cover them with an additional masking field umbrella. What result will this give? Mitsumi is clearly not thrilled with my proposal. He wouldn't want to turn the march order prescribed by the regulations into an incomprehensible mess. The chance of the detachment being detected will decrease by about 10 to 15%. Right now it's not critical yet, but in a couple of kilometers, the most dangerous section will begin. Understood. The lieutenant responds grimly and disconnects. After a couple of minutes, the infantry breaks formation and distributes evenly among my machines. Very timely. A red dot on the tactical hologram appears simultaneously with the activation of the alarm signal. The enemy's reconnaissance drone is flying quite high and passes about 5 kilometers from us. Actually, it shouldn't be here. The battery's guard seems to be getting concerned too early. It's hard to say what briefing they have, but they clearly suspect our presence somewhere near their object. I don't think the United Technologies lobbyists could directly leak our route to them, but unpleasant thoughts on this topic still uncomfortably scratch somewhere in the depths of my consciousness. When there's just over a kilometer left to the attack line, I realize that we won't get any further as such a crowd. Another enemy drone passes very close by. I put the masking field generators of the assault drones into a critical mode, risking completely burning out the emitters. But if we're detected now, the surviving equipment won't help us anyway. Thanks to the contractors who assembled the EU system, the emitters hold up, and the flying spy moves away somewhere behind the mountain range. We're lucky this time, but it's very difficult to predict how things will go further. Stationary scanner at altitude 3.16 reports one of the assault drones leading our column. A yellow flashing triangle appears on the tactical hologram. Around it is marked a dotted circle, the zone of guaranteed detection of our column. We are just 100 meters from the dangers line. The column immediately stops. This doesn't even require an order from the commander. The enemy scanner mark is simultaneously displayed on the projection screens of all the detachment soldiers. And the first thing that needs to be done when such a threat is detected is to stop all movement. A stationary scanner sees an immobile target covered by a masking field noticeably worse than a moving one. Mitsumi is silent. It seems he doesn't see a normal solution. The scanner can be tried to bypass, but most likely it's not the only one here. And it's not a fact that by changing the route, we'll avoid detection. I activate the communication channel with the detachment commander again. Lieutenant, I'm afraid I'll have to go without your fighters from here on. If we all go together, we'll fail the operation. What are you suggesting? It seems Mitsumi himself sees that there are no options. Take a position on the slope of a mountain spur in the dead zone of the stationary scanner. And destroy it as soon as I open fire. Then act according to the situation. If I have to retreat, I'll try to link up with you here. I mark an unremarkable gorge on the tactical hologram. But it would be better for me to hold out until the missile strike promised by the command. You won't hold out, the lieutenant states confidently. According to the briefing, we should simulate an attack with the entire company, but only you with a dozen assault drones will be at the line. Besides, you have weak cannon armament, and missiles won't last long in such a melee. And it's good if they turn out to be effective at all. There are always problems with them. Do you have another suggestion? As soon as you engage in battle, I'll take out the scanner on the mountain and move to help you. Together we'll try to hold out until the main forces of the company arrive. It's about 15 minutes from Elsa's tank's current position to here. During this time, we might be reduced to dust several times, but if we're lucky, we'll wait. Mitsumi doesn't risk contacting the captain. Near the enemy's stationary scanner, such experiments could end very badly. Even communicating via short-range communication needs to be done with great caution. So the lieutenant makes the decision at his own risk. The heavy infantry remains in the gorge, and I lead my bugs further. The stationary scanner here really isn't the only one, but apparently the battery is still quite far away, and so far the density of guard devices is relatively low. In any case, I managed to find a passage through which, with my quality of masking fields, it's relatively safe to seep between the zones of effective scanning and avoid detection. A quiet sound signal in my helmet headphones informs me that I've reached the attack line. The first part of the briefing is completed, albeit somewhat crookedly. On the other hand, the order really doesn't say that we must attack with the entire company, so there are no penalty points for us yet. I wait until all the assault drones take their initial positions. It's not worth delaying the start of the attack. At any moment, an enemy air scout or even a ground patrol could arrive here, though the latter is unlikely. And yet I still hesitate, although the enemy scanner marks have long been circled with green frames of targeting markers, and the plasma guns of the assault drones are just waiting for my command. Something about the current situation doesn't sit right with me, and it doesn't sit right very strongly. They're expecting us, that's obvious. Perhaps the battery's covering forces don't know the exact time of our attack, but the enemy command clearly has no doubt that it will follow. Otherwise, their drones wouldn't be flying in such quantities over the northwestern part of the foothills. How would I act in the place of the United Technologies lobbyists? They're not just looking to destroy my platoon. They need the failure to be obvious to everyone. Therefore, burning us with missiles and aviation on the march isn't the best idea. My superiors could file an appeal, citing that the test conditions didn't correspond to the purpose of the tested equipment. And, by the way, there are some nuances for satisfying such a protest. The assault drones indeed shouldn't be used without adequate air defense coverage. Our competitors don't need rivals, and their lobby in the Federation's military leadership has two strong positions, and our people apparently can't resist them yet. As a result, our competitors need a convincing picture of my platoon's defeat. This means my bugs should be flattened into a thin pancake specifically by ground forces, not aviation. And they should do it with minimal losses. How can this be pulled off? I see two ways. They can create multiple numerical superiority, but then the victory won't look convincing. Especially if I still manage to inflict some losses on the enemy. And I will. My assault drones are very mean guys. The factory tests showed this more than clearly. There's also another option, to bring out something new and unexpected against me, capable of confronting my combat robots on equal terms. United Technologies has such capabilities. The competitors have also entered their 10 unmanned assault machines in the test, controlled by a single operator going into battle in the cabin of a walking tank. If they destroy my platoon, it will look beautiful and convincing. But can they? Nobody can guarantee that, and the competitors are unlikely to want to play the lottery. How can they increase their chances of winning? Very simply, by the time of the decisive battle, my assault drones should be maximally weakened, with significantly depleted protective fields, incomplete ammunition, and perhaps even with combat damage or losses. An unpleasant prospect, especially considering that the enemy is quite capable of organizing all this. If the whole company were with me, I could try to conserve forces and cover myself with Elsa's tanks, which can draw most of the attention of the enemy's firepower. But as it is, all these delights will fall on my bugs from the very beginning. And I don't even have the cover of the company's air defense means, which remained far behind with Captain Maslow's main forces. It seems the competitors have calculated everything very finely, and I essentially have no choice left. Well, if that's the case, let's try to make the opponents play by my rules. After all, the right of the first strike remains with me. The briefing instructs us to start simulating an attack from a specific line, but that doesn't mean I don't have the right to first conduct additional reconnaissance of the area. Following my command, the bugs spread out to the left and right, carefully overcoming mountain spurs and dispersing through different gorges. The main goal is to occupy as much area as possible and detect several more stationary scanners. The more we find, the better. A company is a rather serious unit, and if I want to simulate an attack by the entire company, I need to strike simultaneously at many targets. Stationary scanners are perfect for this. Yellow marks of stationary scanners appear one after another on the tactical hologram. When I strike at them, the enemy should get the feeling that large enemy forces have entered the battle. And let the commander of the battery's covering forces rack his brain over how Captain Maslow's company managed to get so far while avoiding detection, while my immediate task is to make the enemy hit the foothills with all forces. No kidding, as if the entire company had begun advancing from the attack line. There are already 10 yellow triangles on the map. That's probably enough. I give a new order, distribute targets, and observe how the assault drones take their initial positions. I take a short breath and, casting aside all internal doubts, activate the fire sensor, simultaneously launching a pre-prepared chain of commands. Fiery streaks mark the path of plasma clumps torn from the emitters of the assault drone's guns. Stationary and actively radiating stationary scanners are an excellent target for plasma weapons. A fraction of a second before the volley, the assault drones release imitators and generate optoelectric phantoms. In the last moments of their existence, the enemy's stationary scanners manage to record numerous targets. The vast area of the gorge and mountain spurs is filled with groups of walking tanks, detachments of heavy infantry, mobile launchers, and technical support vehicles. This entire phantasmagoric picture is immediately transmitted to the enemy headquarters, but only as a snapshot. Direct hits of plasma clumps vaporize the scanners along with the transmitting devices, leaving smoking craters in their place, covered with the hot crust of molten stone. Or rather, that's how I see what's happening, drawn by the augmented reality system. In reality, the scanners are intact and undamaged, just blocked as conditionally destroyed, and my plasma clumps are no more than a weak imitation. We are, after all, in exercises, and the ammunition here is exclusively training, but the realism must be admitted to be quite like a real battle. If a target is destroyed, it is completely blocked and no longer participates in the battle. If it's damaged, part of the functions are disabled or limited, simulating a real failure of the system's mechanisms. Be that as it may, for some time the enemy in this area has been blinded, if, of course, I've destroyed all his scanners. But this won't last long. In a couple of minutes, the sky will be crowded with enemy aerial scouts. I order the assault drones to change positions and take cover. Now the response will come. Simultaneously, I release 4 disposable probes. These are ordinary missiles, but instead of a warhead, they carry decent scanners and powerful transmitters. The briefing requires pinpointing the enemy positions from which they will open fire or begin advancing towards our company. That's exactly what the probes will do. They'll be shot down, of course, but they'll manage to fulfill their task. The horizon expands to the sides. The control module's computer begins receiving and processing data from the probe scanners. The counterstrike doesn't keep us waiting. Too juicy a target has been detected by the stationary scanners, and the main target has been long expected. I observe 6 small aerial targets, reports the artificial intelligence. I presume reconnaissance UAVs. Who would doubt it? Enemy drones are hurrying to visit us. Their task is to further reconnoiter targets and correct the flight of missiles in the final section of their trajectories. Let's not disappoint them. Imitators and optoelectric phantoms are still active, but if we allow the aerial scouts to approach close enough, the deception will be revealed. Volley. The launch blocks of my bugs light up with flashes of starting anti-aircraft missiles. I immediately spend a quarter of my meager air defense ammunition supply, but greed is inappropriate at the moment. I must convince the enemy that they face the entire company. And therefore, my response must be massive and even excessive. The drones execute anti-missile maneuvers, turn on interference generators, and shoot off decoy imitators, but they have no chance. I assembled and trained the artificial neural networks embedded in the missile guidance system myself. That's the feature of my assault drones. Captain Maslev correctly noted that there's a clear bias towards missile weapons in their armament. It was precisely for my non-standard approach to training multi-layer neural networks that the Zaslan Corporation invited me to this project. Not only the missiles but the assault drones themselves are capable of behaving in ways most unexpected for the enemy in combat conditions. Few believe me, and I don't insist, but facts are stubborn things. I made artificial intelligence experience emotions, real emotions, albeit very specialized ones. Disappointment from poorly done work and satisfaction from work well done. 6 bright flashes flicker in the sky almost simultaneously. The drones are shot down, but the updated coordinates of almost 100 targets have already been transmitted to the enemy command. I detect a missile launch, reports the control module's computer. 120 high-speed maneuverable targets. I presume Piranha S5 missiles. Only 120? And this for 100 targets and taking into account the counteraction of company air defense? It seems my assumptions are correct. They're not planning to destroy us completely, just to severely batter us and reduce our combat capability. And then the main heroes of this confrontation will enter the fray. My assault drones and the control module sit quietly and motionlessly behind natural shelters, hidden under masking fields, while the imitators and optoelectric phantoms continue to move actively. But this isn't enough. The company must somehow react to the approaching threat, and that means I'll have to spend anti-aircraft missiles again. Volley! I'm left with only a third of my ammunition supply, but at least 4 dozen interceptor missiles head towards the approaching wave of enemy missiles. Among them are a couple of completely unique gifts, carrying powerful interference generators instead of warheads. If everything works as it should, the guidance systems of the enemy missiles will have big problems with target recognition, which means that not entirely accurate information about the destroyed equipment of our company will go to the enemy headquarters. My disposable probes are lost. The enemy is also not sleeping and is clearing the sky above their positions. I launch the next quartet of reconnaissance missiles. Continuous information about the enemy must flow into Captain Maslev's command and staff vehicle, and from there to the operation headquarters. Otherwise, the massive missile strike promised by the command will go into emptiness. The key to success is constant updating of target coordinates. There's little hope for the self-guidance systems. Our army doesn't yet have artificial neural networks of my design. And if targets aren't illuminated, EU means we'll knock the missiles off course. The ground under my feet doesn't shake. The augmented reality system can't simulate real explosions to that extent. But the noise is hellish, and the clouds of rocks and soil thrown upward are rendered on the screen more than credibly. Of the 120 missiles, 87 reach their targets. But these aren't exactly the targets the enemy is counting on. Optoelectric phantoms silently dissolve in the air, and imitators disappear in pale flashes of liquidation charge explosions. The transmitters of the enemy missiles' warheads manage to send reports to headquarters about the destroyed equipment and manpower of Captain Maslev's company. I can't know what they contain, but I think the command of the covering force and the ASD battery should be quite puzzled by the results of the missile strike. 3 of my assault drones still get caught in the barrage. 1 is destroyed by a direct hit. 2 more get away with their protective fields depleted by more than half. Close explosions of heavy missiles are no joke. Actually, I've been quite lucky so far. I look at the tactical hologram. Lieutenant Mitsumi's heavy infantry is already approaching, but the main forces of the company are still quite far away. However, Elsa Rutzen's walking tanks aren't wasting time. Taking advantage of the fact that the enemy has something to keep them busy, they're moving quite briskly, but they definitely need about 10 more minutes. Tactical missiles are away! Captain Maslev's voice sounds in my helmet headphones. Approach time 4 minutes. Hold the targets. If you screw up, the strike will hit empty space, and no one will give us a second chance. We'll hold targets, Mitsumi responds, although he has no means for this, but he has me. Reconnaissance probes lost, the computer reports indifferently. This is quite expected. However, my supply of probes is far from infinite. I could use an air defense platoon here. They have plenty of this stuff, even if of lower quality. I curse to myself and launch 4 more disposable probes. There's no room for stinginess here. The territory that needs to be kept under control is too large. My mood is limping. The battle has just begun, and I've already spent quite a bit. Good thing at least the main missile ammunition is still intact. But against air targets, I'm almost defenseless now. Bad. It seems the enemy's plan, if not completely, is being fulfilled. Forward, I give the order more to myself than to the artificial intelligence. The briefing prescribes simulating an attack, which means we can't passively stand in one place. The 9 surviving bugs leave their shelter and begin moving towards the discovered enemy positions. No matter how I prepared myself for the entry of the United Technologies Corporation's assault drone platoon into the game, they appear completely unexpectedly and in a very original way. They emerge from behind the mountain range from the coast side, using individual aircraft, each carrying 1 combat robot. Judging by the fact that my probes missed them, the competitors invested heavily in masking fields. The enemy manages to land before the guidance systems of the anti-aircraft missiles acquire the targets. Very impressive, no argument. But if so much money was spent on this circus, then what was left for the assault drones themselves? I observe the advance of the enemy's main forces, reports the computer, marking on the screen the positions of the units covering the ASD battery. It seems the enemy has detected the movement of Mitsumi's infantry and Elsa's tanks, and my assault drones can't help but make them tense as well. Well, now there are more than enough targets for the tactical missiles that started from the bridgehead. But here and now, all this fuss almost doesn't concern me anymore. Ahead is the main enemy, and I have no right to lose to them. Volley. This time it's not anti-aircraft but loitering anti-tank missiles that go into action. 2 more disposable probes fly slightly above them. I don't see the targets yet, but I know the approximate landing coordinates of the enemy robots. Rocks and sparse vegetation merge into gray-green stripes under the probes. Seconds remain until the enemy assault drones are detected. The enemy also releases reconnaissance probes, and almost immediately kinetic 6 barrels open dense fire on my missiles. It's difficult to shoot down an anti-tank missile with plasma guns. The rate of fire is low. But 20mm automatic cannons can create a whole cloud of shells in its path, which is very difficult to evade. There are too many of them. Simultaneously, the enemy turns on interference generators at full power and releases imitators and optoelectric phantoms. The tactical hologram is filled with hundreds of false targets. This is exactly what Captain Maslov was talking about. Electronic warfare means they're trying to drive the missile guidance system crazy. And usually they succeed. But not now. I myself don't fully understand exactly how the introduction of MO functions into the package of artificial neural networks affects the quality of their training. Artificial intelligence is largely a black box. It can be created using certain rules and algorithms, but once it begins to learn independently, it becomes a unique system functioning according to its own laws. With certainty, I can say only one thing. The presence of emotions becomes a serious additional stimulus for artificial intelligence, improving the quality and speed of learning. In the computers of my assault drones and missile guidance systems is embedded precisely such a package of neural networks, trained according to my methodology, for which I've been repeatedly ridiculed in the scientific community by very authoritative specialists. But for some reason, my employer became interested. Optoelectric phantoms fade and disappear from the screen. Red marks of imitators change color to gray and are ignored by the guidance systems. The anti-tank missile actively maneuvers, evading long bursts from the 6 barrels. I launched them with a reserve so they could attack targets from different sides. And yet the United Technologies engineers clearly don't eat their bread for nothing. More than half of my missiles have already been shot down. The remaining ones definitely won't be enough for the complete destruction of the enemy machines. Flashes of hits, reports the control module's computer. The image from the probe scanners is displayed on the projection screen. 6 impressive explosions swell in the battle formations of the enemy's assault drones. 5 more look less spectacular. The protective fields of 4 United Technologies combat machines and their control module withstand the blow. And I immediately get a response, one I absolutely didn't expect. The battle is clearly not going in the competitor's favor, but they absolutely don't want to lose. There are enough enemy probes and reconnaissance drones in the air now, and my bugs can't hide from their scanners at this distance. We haven't yet come together at direct firing range, and the United Technologies assault drones have few missiles, as preference is traditionally given to plasma guns. But the enemy sees me perfectly and decides to immediately take advantage of this. Missile launched from the position of the battery's guard forces. The computer's voice, as always, is imperturbable. 142 targets. Approach time 30 seconds. Now this is completely unsportsmanlike. Realizing they're losing, the United Technologies lobbyists decide to use the last argument. I don't know what they promised the captain or major now commanding the battery's defense. But instead of spending his last missiles on striking Captain Maslow's main forces, he dumps them all on the head of my assault drones. An absolutely absurd idea from the point of view of solving the task set before him, but he has every chance to burn my platoon. Most likely such a trick will cost him his career, but apparently a warm place is already waiting for him at United Technologies. I have almost no anti-aircraft missiles left, and they wouldn't stop such a strike anyway, and the trick I pulled with the enemy's first missile salvo also can't be repeated. Then I managed to temporarily blind the enemy. But now my machines are illuminated by the surviving assault drones of the competitors. I do the first thing that comes to mind. I make my bugs charge in a frontal attack against the enemy, who hasn't yet fully recovered from the blow of my anti-tank missiles. The goal is simple, to maximally reduce the distance and manage to finish off the enemy, so that the battle with the competitors ends at least in a draw. The assault drones jump onto the elevation and unleash all the remaining missile ammunition on the 5 well-visible ground targets and reconnaissance probes above our heads. In response comes a generous portion of plasma, but there are 10 of us, and only 5 opponents remain, and my bugs have almost full resource of protective fields, while the United Technologies machines are quite beaten up and possibly have damage, but their guns are enviably good. Within a dozen seconds, I lose 3 assault drones. The protective fields of the others are barely holding, but the enemy gets their portion of pleasure too. My plasma guns are a bit weak, but the missiles are mean and biting, especially when firing from such a short distance. Targets destroyed. The Olympic calm of the artificial intelligence is starting to annoy me. 10 seconds to enemy missile impact. That's it, we've arrived. My platoon can't escape from the deadly avalanche from the sky, but I can't just stand still waiting for the strike. I throw the surviving machines under the cover of the rocks. The missiles are already close, and I have nothing to meet them with. Hold on! Civilian! Captain Maslow's voice sounds in my helmet headphones. We're coming. Dozens of fiery streaks rush right over my head, engaged with the United Technologies assault drones. I lost sight of what was happening around for a while. After all, I'm not a professional military man, but a dilettante who has picked up a bit of tactical basics. So I simply missed the approach of the company's main forces. Hundreds of anti-aircraft shells rush to meet the enemy missiles. The company's air defense is working. Lieutenant Mitsumi's infantry contributes to the common cause, using portable missile complexes. Even Elsa Rutzen's medium tanks, which have brazenly climbed onto elevations and are pouring fire from all barrels at the approaching missiles, are firing at air targets. All the enemy's attention is focused exclusively on my platoon, and Captain Maslow makes maximum use of this obvious mistake by the enemy, without even questioning what caused it. At the edge of my consciousness, I note how a sea of fire covers the positions of the enemy battery's defense forces. The tactical missiles launched from the bridgehead finally hit the targets we've illuminated, and then they come for my platoon. Despite the dense barrage fire, part of the enemy missiles still manages to break through. Only now they're hitting indiscriminately. The United Technologies assault drones are destroyed, drones and disposable probes are shot down, and there's no one left to guide the missiles to targets. However, this helps only partially. The earth and rocks around my control module rise up. The augmented reality mode is doing its best to display the full picture of a massive missile strike. The alarm signal howls, a wave of distortions runs across the tactical hologram. Protective field lost. The computer's voice is still calm. Chassis damaged. Movement speed reduced to 1/3 of nominal. Right plasma guns disabled. Anti-aircraft and anti-tank missile ammunition exhausted. I look at the tactical hologram and see that only 2 of my bugs have survived, and even those are barely moving. They're hardly capable of continuing the battle, but from the perspective of test results, these are 2 surviving combat units. Well, Captain Maslow's people will easily handle the final part of the task without me. I activate the communication channel and call Mitsumi. Lieutenant, I have 3 machines left, all with damage and practically no ammunition. I request permission to withdraw from battle. You're a lucky one, civilian. Instead of Mitsumi, Captain Maslow answers me. Permission to withdraw granted. You've already done your job. I'm lying on the bed in my assigned cabin. The landing transport anchorage is preparing for another hyperjump on the way to the solar system. The exercises are completed, but the military is still silent about their results. Just before the jump, the transport exchanges messages via hyperlink with Earth, and my communicator vibrates, notifying its owner of an incoming message. I look at the sender's number and raise an eyebrow in surprise. However, I'm probably slightly deceiving myself. I expected something like this, but I didn't think the CEO would decide to send a message personally. My congratulations, Roman. Upon arrival, you take the position of department head. In 3 days, official signing of the contract with the Ministry of Defense. You're now the project manager, so your presence is mandatory. I lean back on the pillow and smile. I think it's not for nothing that the CEO decided to spend on hyperlink and send me this message right now. Although he could have waited about 15 hours and contacted me already in the solar system. But he still was late. Or, more correctly, he didn't make it in time. A representative of United Technologies found me almost immediately after returning to the ship and made me an offer that, in his opinion, I couldn't refuse. A salary almost twice as high as what I could expect at my current job even after the promotion, an individual bonus package, and the main position of the corporation's leading developer. He presented it beautifully, no denying that. Our CEO knew this would happen, knew and hurried to inform me that he had already fulfilled everything he promised me before this assignment. But it's all in vain. I politely but unambiguously sent that gentleman from the competitor's office to widely known coordinates. Why? I probably won't find a rational explanation for my decision myself. I've already become attached to this place. It was here that they truly believed in me for the first time and gave me the opportunity to develop an idea that previously had been met with nothing but contemptuous sarcasm. And after that to defect to the competitors? Someone might have done so, but I simply found it disgusting. I don't want to feel like a traitor, however banal that may sound. The entrance terminal signal distracts me from my thoughts. Someone wished to see me and didn't mind personally coming to my cabin instead of just calling. Open! I command the service block, and the door silently slides to the side. Hi, senior developer. Smiling Elsa stands at the threshold, and behind her shoulders loom the pleased faces of Lieutenant Mitsumi and other officers of my company. Well, not mine anymore. I'm going home, and our paths diverge, although, of course, it's a pity. I would gladly continue my acquaintance with Elsa. I see you're planning to leave our wonderful ship without treating us to celebrate the successful completion of the exercises? Elsa immediately states, sliding over me with a mocking gaze. Tell me honestly, senior developer Roman Prokhorov, after the results of our joint performance, you'll get quite a few perks, right? Already got them. I also smile, get up from the bed, and take a step towards the officers. I'm now the department head and project manager. There, Elsa exclaims, raising her index finger. And our commander is now not a captain, but a whole major. And he's waiting for all of us in the bar on the third deck with the table already set. Well, I thought that you also had some part in this affair. And the guys decided that if 2 people are treating, then the celebration will be twice as fun. Can't argue with your logic. I look at Elsa with interest, which causes satisfied smirks from Mitsumi and his comrades. So are you with us? Do you even need to ask? I smile predatorily at the brave warriors and catch myself thinking that the idea of continuing my acquaintance with Elsa has some chances of coming to life. Just let me put on something more appropriate for the occasion.